what would my cycle auditing topics be without a little travel through QuickBooks? So let's look at QuickBooks so we can see, again, kind of an operational system and what's out there for the auditor. So this is the flow chart that you'll see in the QuickBooks system. It covers a lot of the tasks we talked about, purchase orders. You can either enter a bill for a service and go right to pay it, or you can enter and receive inventory and then the bill related to that. So this is all a basic flow within QuickBooks related to the procurement and payment cycle. So QuickBooks, you'll notice, does not have a purchase requisition document. So if you do have one, that's probably going to be some off the system handwritten type of document. Again, the larger systems will have requisitions and purchase orders. So from a vendor standpoint, you'll see there's a vendor center, which lists all the vendors that you've got there. It's got all the open balances for those. You can look at the transactions by vendor, but it just lists the vendor. You can fix or change the master data within there related to the vendor. You've got a bill tracker that shows the bills that are outstanding or coming due so that you'll know what your cash requirements are. You can enter bills, you can pay bills, you can create purchase orders, receive items and enter that bill, or just receive the items and then enter that bill for those received items. You've got inventory activities, you can do 1099s, and your vendors, anybody over $600 or that's an attorney, is required to have a 1099. And a lot of times you've got to make sure that if it's an LLC, a sole practitioner, they should have one. Some of the larger corporations, like if you have a Verizon Wireless bill, you don't need to send a 1099 to Verizon Wireless. But if you got Joe's Machine Shop down the corner there that you paid $1,000 to fix one of your company automobiles, you should do a 1099 for them, since Joe is probably a sole practitioner. Quick look at the master data. So this is Toy Builder Company. We've seen them before. They have a current balance that we owe them of $33 million out there. It's got all the basics about the Toy Builder Company in there. I haven't filled everything in there, but you can see it's from Lake Placid, New York. But we could also do payment settings, where if we could do electronic fund transfers, we could do tax settings, account settings, like which account do most of the purchases from this vendor go to. Those are the types of things that we will set up in the master data. So this is the purchase order that Specialty Toys sent out to Toy Builder Company, and you can see they've ordered everything from the Aha Ala cabooses to the Lulu Lusters to the Jang Jinglers, and so all these items are purchased, and it rolls up that purchase order to a $33 million total. You'll see to the right side, it's got the open balance. If there's any bills or payments, it'll show all those recent activities out there for this particular vendor. We can also enter the bill for that. In that receive and enter bill, this is kind of the same screen. So you're going to enter all those items that have been received and the amount that's on the invoice that you've got. So it's, even though it says bill, it's talking about the invoice that you received. And it'll pop up on that side as far as the right side with the vendor activity and recent transactions. So that's a typical invoice entry screen. You can also receive an item into QuickBooks by itself, and this would be the receiving screen. And like most systems, you would be entering all the items in related to that vendor's purchase order. And later on, when you decide to enter the bill, the systems will talk to each other, so it'll bring it up and say, "Hey, you've got this item receipt. Is that what this bill is for?" And then it makes entering the bill much quicker and easier. But that's the item receipt screen. So when it comes time to actually pay the bills, you'll come up with this pay bill screen. And what it's really good for is it helps you with cash requirements. How much cash do you really need? So you have the ability to show all bills, but you can show all bills that are due now so that you're only paying those bills that you really need to pay. So you've got it sorted by due date. Now it's the only bill we've got in there is this toy builder. But if I was to click that, and you'll see the empty box there, if I was to click that, it would show the $33 million that we potentially would pay in the last column, amount to pay. And that would actually deduct off of my bank account, so it would show me what my ending balance was after I paid that bill. You can see that down in the bottom in the middle. So in this particular version of QuickBooks, you've got the payment date. You can pick whether it's a check, it's an EFT, or a credit card payment. So then you're going to assign a check, or whether it's going to be printed in a batch. These are options that you have. But this is a good tool to see if I pay all these bills, will I have enough cash to pay those bills? And maybe I can put some bills off, or maybe I can pay more than I have listed for today's due date. So these are all cash management decisions that you can do through this process. Usually most systems have some sort of reporting that you as an auditor would be very interested in. So QuickBooks has its vendor reports, and you can see there's a few there. The AP aging summary, that's a big deal, but you can also get transactions by vendor, see if the 1099s have been done properly. All this comes out of the vendor reports. So the typical example is the AP aging summary on your top right side of the screen. That shows our toy builder invoice for $33 million there, and because it was a 2017 invoice in this mock data QuickBooks I've got, you can see it's a very old invoice on the aging report. And then I show the transactions down below where we had a purchase order, and then we also had a bill. So this gives you an idea of some of the vendor reports. As an auditor, you're going to want some reports on check details. So that's where our cutoff tests come in. So one of the ways you can do that is you can go to reports, and under banking, run off a check detail report. But you'll find that sometimes the company will have different procedures. They may not do it necessarily by check. They may be doing journal entries. So you can go to the middle of the presentation here and see that I went to reports and accountant and taxes. There's a couple different reports I could run. I could do a transaction detail by account, but one of the ones I like to use a lot is the journal, which is right below it. That journal will show me all the transactions. But one of the things you have to watch out for in many systems, including QuickBooks, is am I getting all the transaction types I'm supposed to get? So you can, through your filter and modifying reports, or when you're discussing this with an IT person, make sure you get the right transactions, which I want any checks or any bill payments. I may also want those journals that's in the middle of that list there included in the report that I've got related to anything to the checking account activity. So that kind of gives you a couple reports that you'll want from an auditor to verify payments. Finally, let's look at some inventory reports. So if you go to the reports section in QuickBooks and go down to inventory, you'll see an inventory valuation summary and inventory valuation detail. You'll get stock statuses by items or by vendor, physical inventory count sheet, and that's what's showed here is so that you can print off that count sheet and use that for the observation. You'll see the quantity listed that's supposed to be on hand, and then you'll put your actual count. And then you have pending bills, which is usually related to those cost rolls that I talked about. So for inventory reports, some other ones are the inventory valuation detail. You get a summary or a detail, but it'll show you the items and how their value is calculated. So in the case of the Aha Ala Cabasters here, the bill really means a vendor bill. So that's a product that came in. So there's 100,000 that came in. And then an invoice was a sales invoice. So that's the 100 that went out. So that makes up our current balance of Ala Cabasters there. Now, if you look at the inventory stock status item report below, you'll see the Tartingas. And we could do that for all the items. I just didn't have enough room, so I just showed the Tartingas. You'll see a reorder point of 100, a maximum supposed to be 2,000, yet we have 97,000 on hand. So obviously there was some problem in our reordering point, and that as an auditor, you might want to identify that. The sales order will reduce the on-hand quantity, saying you might have 97,000, but we've got this many that are out there on a sales order that are going to be leaving the place. So really the available quantity is what the difference is there. We'll see if we have any ordered on a PO, what our normal order quantity is, maybe even our sales per week. So it's a really good report for understanding any particular item. One of my favorite reports, and from an inventory standpoint in QuickBooks anyways, I'll go to the item listing. So this isn't in reports, it's actually in the lists. And you go under item and you'll see all the items that are sold out there. So I went to the Tartingas again, and you'll see the reports across the bottom of that screen below the Tartingas. So it'll do your price list, item list, and whatever, but I want that quick report on Tartingas. It's one of my favorite reports. You click it out, you see the quick report, you see it labels it as an invoice or a credit memo or what have you, purchase orders, sales orders. It's all listed there, all the activity for that item. It's great from an auditing perspective when you're looking at the transactions for any particular item. Well, that concludes our discussion on auditing the payment cycle.